No maid survived a day with the billionaire's triplets, not one. Each woman left in tears, their bags packed before sunset. But that morning, when a quiet black woman named Jessica Parker walked into the Wilson mansion, something strange happened. The boys who had chased everyone away looked at her with the same anger that had broken 17 hearts before her. They threw things, screamed, and promised to make her leave. Yet Jessica didn't move. She just stood there, calm and still, her voice soft as she said, "I know what it feels like to lose someone." From that moment, the mansion that had known only chaos and grief was about to witness something no money could ever buy. Something that would test every soul inside those walls. The Wilson mansion stood on the edge of New York City, surrounded by tall iron gates and quiet gardens. Inside, every corner still carried memories of Emily Wilson, the late wife of billionaire Robert Wilson. Her perfume lingered faintly in the hallways, and her laughter seemed trapped in the air. Since her death 6 months ago, peace had vanished from the house. Robert's triplet sons, David, Denials, and Dennis, had turned the mansion upside down. They were 6 years old, but their anger made them seem much older. No nanny had lasted more than a day. Some left within hours. Others cried as they ran out of the door, swearing never to come back. That morning, the living room looked like a storm had passed through. Toys were scattered everywhere. Paint dripped down the white walls, and feathers from torn pillows floated in the air. Jessica stood quietly in the doorway, her dark eyes moving slowly across the chaos. The triplets were standing in the middle of it all, faces red, eyes wet with tears. "You can't make us like you," shouted David, the oldest, his small fists tight. "We don't want another nanny. We want our mama." Jessica didn't answer at first. She looked at the boys, not with anger, but with deep sadness. She saw pain, not mischief. Slowly, she stepped forward, her shoes crunching over broken toys. "I know you miss your mama," she said gently, "and I'm not here to replace her. I'm just here because I think you need someone who understands what it feels like when everything falls apart." The boys stopped for a moment, shocked. No one had ever spoken to them like that. Denials frowned and crossed his arms. "You don't know anything about us." Jessica nodded. "You're right, I don't know everything yet, but I know you're hurting. I know you're scared that if you care about someone again, they'll leave too." Dennis lowered his eyes. His little hand clutched a broken toy car. Jessica bent down, slowly, to be at their level. "You don't have to like me," she said softly, "but I'm not going anywhere." From the hallway came the sound of heavy footsteps. The boys froze. "Daddy's coming," whispered Denials. "He's going to be mad." Robert Wilson appeared in the doorway, tall and tired, his face pale from sleepless nights. He stopped when he saw the mess. "What happened here?" he asked, his voice tight. The boys looked down, afraid. Before anyone could speak, Jessica turned to him calmly. "They were expressing how they feel," she said. "Sometimes children don't have the right words, so their pain comes out in noise and chaos." Robert stared at her, surprised. No one had ever defended his sons like that. Every other nanny had blamed them, called them impossible, or threatened to quit. Jessica's calm voice disarmed him. She turned back to the boys. "I think we've had enough shouting for one morning. How about we clean up together? I'll help." The triplets exchanged confused looks. "Why would you help us?" David asked. "Because we made this mess together," Jessica said. "We'll fix it together." It took hours, but little by little the room began to look normal again. Jessica turned cleaning into a game, pretending to be a detective looking for lost toys. The boys laughed for the first time in months. Robert watched quietly from the hallway, unable to believe what he was seeing. When the room was finally clean, Jessica gathered the boys around her. "You did great," she said. "Now, how about we make something for your mama?" something she would smile at if she could see it. Dennis looked up. She liked cookies, he whispered. Then cookies it is, Jessica said. The kitchen, which had once been a battlefield of food fights, slowly filled with the smell of chocolate chips and laughter. Jessica let the boys mix the dough, even when flour spilled on the counter. She didn't scold them. Instead, she smiled. It's okay, she said. Mess means memories. For the first time, the Wilson mansion didn't feel empty. It felt alive. When the cookies were ready, the boys sat at the table, warm chocolate melting on their fingers. Jessica took a seat across from them. These are good, she said with a grin. They're Mama's favorite, said Denials quietly. Jessica nodded. I think she'd be proud of you. Robert leaned against the doorway, his eyes soft. Something stirred inside him that he hadn't felt in months' hope. But deep down, a fear still lingered. Every nanny had started out hopeful. Every one of them had left in tears. Could this woman really be different? As the evening light filled the kitchen, Jessica washed the dishes while humming a gentle tune. The boys were quiet now, sleepy from laughter and sugar. They sat on the floor, building small towers from toy blocks. Suddenly, Robert's phone rang. He answered, expecting his assistant, but the voice on the other end made his heart drop. Mr. Wilson, this is Linda from Metro News, the woman said. We're running a story tonight about your family. Someone leaked information about your sons and the nannies who quit. The headline reads, Billionaire's demon triplets drive away 17 nannies. Do you have any comment? Robert froze, his breath catching. Please, don't run that story, he said quickly. They're just children. I'm sorry, sir, she replied. It's already scheduled to air. He hung up slowly, his mind spinning. He looked toward the kitchen where Jessica was laughing with the boys. For the first time in months, they looked happy. But he knew everything was about to change again. He whispered to himself, Please, don't let this destroy us. And outside, the city lights of New York flickered as another storm prepared to hit the Wilson family. A storm that would test the strength of love, patience, and the courage of one woman who refused to give up. The Wilson mansion was quiet that night, but Robert Wilson could not sleep. The ticking clock on his wall sounded louder than ever, and his phone screen glowed faintly beside him. The news story would air in a few hours, and his heart was heavy with fear. For months, he had struggled to hold his family together, but this time the damage might be too great. He sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his forehead, thinking about his sons. For the first time in a long while, they had laughed. He had seen peace on their faces, and it had all come from Jessica Parker. Down the hall, Jessica was still awake. The boys had fallen asleep together on the rug in the playroom, their tiny heads resting side by side. Jessica had covered them with a soft blanket, her hand gently brushing their hair. She stood quietly in the doorway, watching their peaceful faces, and her eyes filled with tears. She remembered her own childhood, the nights she cried alone after her parents died in that fire. No one had tucked her in. No one had whispered that things would get better. Maybe that was why she felt so connected to these boys. Their pain was the same pain she had carried for years. In the morning, the sunlight crept into the house, warm and soft. The smell of pancakes filled the kitchen. Jessica had been up early, mixing batter and humming softly. She wanted the boys' day to start with warmth. David was the first to appear, rubbing his sleepy eyes. You made breakfast? He asked, surprised. I did, Jessica smiled, flipping another pancake. I made extra for your daddy, too. Denials and Dennis soon joined, dragging their small chairs closer to the table. Can we help? Dennis asked shyly. Jessica handed them spoons. Of course. Helpers make the food taste better. When Robert walked in, still wearing his work shirt and a tired expression, he stopped at the door. The kitchen was calm. His sons were smiling. Jessica turned and handed him a cup of coffee. "Good morning, Mr. Wilson." He took the cup and hesitated. "You don't have to do all this." Jessica shook her head gently. "I'm not doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because they need mornings like this." Robert looked at her closely. There was something about her calmness that unsettled him. She didn't talk to him like an employee, and she didn't treat his wealth like it mattered. She moved with quiet strength, as if she had known loss so deep that nothing could scare her anymore. At 8 o'clock, the TV in the living room came alive. The news anchor's voice filled the air. Tonight, billionaire Robert Wilson faces new controversy as his 3 sons, known for chasing away 17 nannies, are described as dangerous and unmanageable. The boys froze. Jessica put down the spatula slowly, her heart sinking. On the screen, pictures of the triplets appeared, with words like problem children flashing beneath them. "Daddy," Denials whispered, his small voice trembling. "Why are they saying that about us?" Robert swallowed hard. He turned off the stove and sat down beside them. "People sometimes say things they don't understand," he said quietly. "They don't know the truth." The first former nanny appeared on the screen. "Those boys are wild. They break everything and refuse to listen. I've never met such difficult children." Dennis's eyes filled with tears. "Are we really that bad?" Before Robert could speak, Jessica knelt in front of the boys. "No, you are not bad," she said softly. "You are hurting. And sometimes, when our hearts hurt, it comes out in ways people don't understand." The second nanny spoke next. "Their father is never home. The children have no control, no love, and no hope." Robert felt a deep ache in his chest. He wanted to defend himself, but his throat tightened. He knew there was truth in her words. He had buried himself in work to escape the pain of losing Emily. Jessica looked at him with gentle eyes. "Mr. Wilson, may I say something?" He nodded weakly. She turned back to the boys. "Your daddy loves you," she said. "He's been trying so hard to fix everything, even though his own heart is broken too. Sometimes adults don't show pain the way children do. They hide it behind work or silence. But love is still there." The third nanny's voice cut through the air. "Those children are damaged. No amount of love can fix them." David covered his ears. "Make it stop," he cried. "I don't want to hear anymore." Jessica gently turned off the television and pulled all 3 boys into her arms. "Listen to me, sweet boys," she said softly. "You are not broken. You are brave. You loved your mama so much that losing her made your world feel unsafe. But that doesn't make you bad. It makes you human." Robert sat back, watching the scene unfold. The way Jessica spoke to his sons was something he had never seen before. She wasn't trying to erase their pain. She was teaching them how to live with it. After a long silence, David looked up. "Will you leave us too?" he asked. Jessica wiped a tear from her cheek and shook her head. "No, sweetheart. I came here to stay. I don't give up on people who need love." Later that day, Robert received a call from his lawyer, and his hands began to shake. "Robert," the lawyer said, "the story went viral overnight. There are hundreds of comments. Some are calling for an investigation. Child Protective Services has been notified." Robert's face went pale. "They think my sons are in danger?" "It's standard," the lawyer replied, "but they'll send someone for a home visit." When he ended the call, Jessica was cleaning up the kitchen with the boys. They were giggling as they stacked dishes. He didn't want to ruin that peace, but he had no choice. "Jessica," he said softly, "CPS is coming." She looked up. "When?" "Tomorrow," he whispered. "If they believe what the media says, they could take the boys." Jessica put down the towel slowly. "Then we'll show them the truth." Robert frowned. "The truth?" She nodded. "Yes. That this is not a broken home. This is a home that's learning to heal. He looked at her, stunned by her certainty. For months he had felt powerless. But now, somehow, this woman, this stranger, gave him hope. That night, when the triplets slept, Robert found Jessica sitting by the window, looking out over the city lights. "You're not scared?" he asked. "I've been through worse," she said quietly. "But I've also seen miracles happen when people choose to love instead of run." Robert was silent. He looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she was not just another nanny. She was someone who carried light into dark places. Someone who might just save his family. As rain began to fall softly against the window, Jessica whispered, "Tomorrow, they will see what I see. 3 boys who just need love." And Robert, for the first time since Emily's death, allowed himself to believe she might be right. The next morning came with soft rain over New York. The clouds were heavy, and the sound of thunder rolled faintly in the distance. Inside the Wilson mansion, Jessica Parker was already awake, moving quietly around the kitchen. She wanted the day to start calm and warm, not fearful. Today, the social worker from Child Protective Services was coming. She looked around the house, remembering how messy it had been on her first day. Now, everything felt different. The boys had helped her clean last night, laughing as they wiped tables and folded napkins. For them, it was a game, but Jessica knew it meant more. It was proof that healing had begun. She heard small footsteps behind her. It was Dennis, still in his pajamas, holding his teddy bear. "Miss Jessica," he whispered, "is the lady coming to take us away?" Jessica knelt down and placed her hands gently on his shoulders. "No, sweetheart," she said softly. "The lady is coming to see how brave and kind you are. We're going to show her what real love looks like." Dennis nodded slowly, though his little eyes still held fear. He walked away quietly, and Jessica felt her heart ache. Children should never have to carry that kind of worry. By 8 o'clock, the triplets were dressed in matching blue shirts, waiting on the couch. Robert Wilson came downstairs, adjusting his tie. He looked nervous, though he tried to hide it. "Is everything ready?" he asked. Jessica nodded. "Everything is fine. Just remember, we don't need to prove we're perfect. We just need to be honest." Robert took a deep breath. "I hope honesty is enough." At 9 sharp, the doorbell rang. Robert opened the door to find a woman in her 50s standing there with a clipboard. Her name was Mrs. Karen Lewis. She wore glasses and a gray coat, and her expression was serious. "Good morning, Mr. Wilson," she said. "I'm here to conduct the home visit regarding the report we received." "Please come in," Robert said politely. Mrs. Lewis stepped inside, her eyes scanning the living room. It was tidy, the smell of cookies filling the air. The triplets stood side by side, whispering softly to each other. Jessica stepped forward with a smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Lewis. I'm Jessica Parker. The boys and I were just finishing breakfast. Would you like some coffee?" Mrs. Lewis looked at her with surprise. "Coffee would be nice, thank you." Jessica led her to the dining area, where the boys had set up a small plate of cookies. "We made these ourselves," David said proudly. "We're giving them to Daddy's workers later, to thank them for helping him build things." Mrs. Lewis raised an eyebrow. "You boys made these?" Dennis nodded. "Miss Jessica taught us how to measure and mix. She says when people work hard, they deserve something sweet." Jessica smiled softly. "It teaches them kindness," she said. "Something this home was missing for a while." Mrs. Lewis took notes, her expression softening. She asked the boys to show her their rooms. The triplets took her upstairs, chattering excitedly about their toys and drawings. On the walls were pictures they had drawn of their mother, Emily. Beneath one drawing, in small letters, they had written, "We still love you, Mama." Mrs. Lewis looked at the drawing for a long time. "Did you make this?" she asked. David nodded. "Miss Jessica helped us. She said even if Mama's in heaven, love doesn't go away. Downstairs, Robert stood beside Jessica, watching the rain through the window. Do you think she believes us? He asked quietly. Jessica turned to him. She doesn't need to believe words. She just needs to see hearts. And that's what she's seeing now. When the boys came back down, Mrs. Lewis followed. Her notepad was full, but her face looked softer than when she had arrived. Mr. Wilson, she said, I'd like to stay a little longer, if that's all right. I want to observe the family's routine. Of course, Robert said. The rest of the morning unfolded naturally. The triplets helped Jessica prepare lunch, taking turns stirring soup and setting the table. When one of them spilled water, Jessica didn't scold him. She smiled and said, "Accidents happen. Let's clean it together." The boys laughed and helped, their teamwork catching Mrs. Lewis's attention. After lunch, Jessica gathered them in the living room for reading time. "Who wants to pick today's story?" she asked. "Me!" all three shouted. They settled on a story about a brave bird that lost its nest in a storm but built a new one even stronger. As Jessica read, the boys leaned close, their small hands holding hers. Robert sat quietly on the couch, his eyes glistening. The story wasn't just for the boys. It was for him, too. When the reading ended, Mrs. Lewis cleared her throat. "Mr. Wilson, Miss Parker," she said, "I've been doing this job for 20 years. I came here expecting to see chaos and sadness. But what I see is love. These children are not broken. They are healing. And that is because of both of you." Robert's eyes filled with relief. "So, you're not taking them?" Mrs. Lewis smiled faintly. "On the contrary, I'll be recommending that this case be closed. These boys belong right here, with their father and Miss Parker." The triplets jumped up, cheering. Dennis ran to Jessica and hugged her tightly. "We can stay," he shouted. Jessica hugged him back, tears in her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart, you're home." Mrs. Lewis packed her files and shook Jessica's hand. "Whatever you're doing, Miss Parker, keep doing it. These children are lucky to have you." After she left, the house was filled with laughter again. The rain had stopped, and sunlight peeked through the clouds, spreading warmth across the room. Robert stood near the window, watching the boys dance around Jessica. He turned to her slowly. "You saved us," he said quietly. Jessica shook her head. "No, Mr. Wilson. Love saved you. I just reminded you it was still here." He looked at her, his voice low. "You know, for months, I prayed for someone who could bring peace back into this home. I didn't know it would come like this." Jessica smiled gently. "Peace doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it comes quietly, through the people who refuse to give up." Outside, the clouds cleared, leaving the mansion bathed in golden light. Robert looked at his sons, at the woman who had changed everything, and felt something he hadn't felt since Emily's death hope. That night, when the boys fell asleep, Jessica walked into the garden, breathing in the fresh air after the rain. The roses were wet, shining softly under the moonlight. Robert found her there, standing near the old swing Emily used to love. "Miss Jessica," he said softly, "I don't know how to thank you." She looked up at him, her expression gentle. "You don't have to. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Never stop showing them love, even when it's hard. That's what heals broken hearts." Robert nodded slowly. "I promise." And for the first time in many months, he meant it with all his heart. 6 months passed, and the Wilson mansion no longer felt like a place of grief. The sound of laughter filled every room. The walls that once echoed with anger now carried the voices of 3 happy boys who had learned to smile again. Robert Wilson watched his triplets playing in the garden one Saturday morning. David was chasing butterflies, Denials was building a small tower with blocks on the porch, and Dennis was giggling as he tried to blow bubbles into the air. The sky was bright blue, and for once, Robert felt peace. Jessica Parker stood a few feet away, hanging clean clothes on the line, her simple blue dress moving softly in the wind. She turned and smiled when she saw the boys laughing, her eyes warm and full of affection. Every day since she arrived, she had given this family more than care. She had given them love, and in return, they had given her a sense of belonging she never thought she would find. Robert walked up to her, holding 2 cups of lemonade. "You deserve this," he said, handing one to her. Jessica smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson." "Robert," he corrected gently. "You've earned the right to call me that." She laughed quietly. "All right, Robert." They stood together for a moment, watching the boys play. "They've changed so much," Robert said softly. 6 months ago, they couldn't even sleep without screaming. Now they wake up excited for the day. Jessica nodded. "That's what happens when love replaces fear," she said. "Children don't stay broken if someone refuses to give up on them." Robert looked at her for a long time, then said, "You didn't just heal my sons, Jessica. You healed me too." Jessica turned her head slowly, surprised by the tone in his voice. "You were always strong, Robert. You just needed a reason to stop hiding behind work." He smiled faintly, looking down at the cup in his hand. "I used to think money could fix anything, but when Emily died, I learned that no amount of wealth can repair a heart. Then you came. You didn't bring money, you brought peace." Jessica's eyes softened, but she didn't speak. She didn't know what to say. That evening, the triplets ran into the living room, holding a folded piece of paper. "Miss Jessica," Dennis shouted, "we made something for you." She knelt down as they opened the paper. Inside were crayon drawings of the 4 of them standing together, holding hands. Above the drawings were the words, "Our family." Jessica covered her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, boys," she whispered, "this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." David smiled shyly. "We wanted you to know we love you, and we don't want you to ever leave." She pulled them close, hugging them tightly. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. "I promise." From the corner of the room, Robert stood watching the scene. His heart swelled with emotion. He had seen many miracles in business, but this was the greatest one of all. That night, when the boys were asleep, Robert walked into the garden. Jessica was there again, sitting on the same bench where Emily once loved to read. The moonlight fell gently across her face, and the sound of crickets filled the air. Robert walked closer, his steps slow and uncertain. "Jessica," he said quietly. She looked up at him. "Yes? There's something I've been meaning to tell you." She smiled softly. "You look serious." "I am," he said, taking a deep breath. "When Emily died, I thought our story ended. I thought I'd never see my sons happy again, and I thought I'd never feel anything close to peace. But you changed that. You didn't just come here to work, you came here to give us life again." Jessica looked down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Robert." He knelt down in front of her, his voice trembling slightly. "Jessica Parker, I love you. My sons love you. And I can't imagine this home without you in it." Her eyes widened, tears forming as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring box. "Will you marry me?" he asked softly. "Will you stay with us, not as the maid, but as our family?" Jessica covered her face, overwhelmed. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she looked up, smiling through her tears. "Yes, Robert, yes, I will." Robert let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He stood and pulled her into his arms. The garden lights glowed faintly around them, and from the upstairs window, 3 little faces watched silently, eyes wide with joy. The next morning, the mansion was filled with laughter again. David ran into the kitchen yelling, "Miss Jessica's getting married!" Denials corrected him, giggling. She's not Miss Jessica anymore. She's going to be Mrs. Wilson." Dennis clapped his hands and shouted, "We have a mama again!" The wedding was small, held in the garden where Robert had proposed. The triplets stood proudly as ring-bearers, wearing matching suits. When it was time for vows, Robert's voice was steady but filled with emotion. "Jessica," he said, "you didn't just love me. You loved my sons when the world gave up on them. You gave us back our family." Jessica's eyes were wet with tears as she replied, "Robert, you and the boys showed me that love is not about blood or money, it's about choice, and I choose you, all of you, for the rest of my life." The ceremony ended with cheers and tears, and when the sun set, the garden lights shimmered softly over a family finally whole again. 2 years later, Robert and Jessica welcomed a baby girl named Lily. The triplets were thrilled, always fighting over who got to hold her. "She's our baby too," Dennis said proudly. "We'll protect her just like Miss Jessica protected us." Life in the Wilson mansion was no longer silent or sad. It was filled with laughter, bedtime stories, and warmth. Robert started a charity in Emily's memory to help single parents and grieving families, while Jessica began helping other children through a small community program. Every year, they visited Emily's grave together. The boys would place flowers and whisper, "Mama, we're okay now. Daddy smiles again, and Miss Jessica takes care of us. You don't have to worry." Robert always stood behind them, holding Jessica's hand. He knew Emily would have wanted this peace, love, and a home full of life. As the sun set behind the hills of New York, the family walked back to their car, the triplets chasing each other and laughing loudly. Jessica looked at Robert, her heart full. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. Robert nodded. "Every day. And I thank God for the day you walked into our lives." Jessica smiled softly, leaning against him. "No maid survived a day with the Billionaire's triplets," she said quietly, almost to herself. "But love did." And in that moment, under the warm evening sky, it was clear that love, steady, patient, and pure, had finally healed what money never could. Dear viewers, this story reminds us that love can heal even the deepest pain. No amount of money can fix a broken heart, but patience, kindness, and faith can bring light back into a dark home. Jessica didn't just become a nanny, she became a mother, a friend, and the reason 3 lost boys learned to smile again. Let us all remember, sometimes the strongest families are not the ones born by blood, but the ones built by love. Before you go, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and what lesson you learned from this story. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who believes in second chances and the power of love. And if you want more emotional stories like this one, comment more stories below, and you'll be the first to receive the next heart-touching tale.